Republican Congressman Don Bacon of Nebraska. Thank you so much for being here, sir.
Thank you.
You just heard Hakeem Jeffries. If the Speaker would allow a vote to pass that Senate bill, yes, you would vote yes?
Okay, I'm sorry. Somebody was on the headset talking to me.
Oh, okay.
I apologize.
That's okay. So my question is, how would you vote if House Speaker Mike Johnson would allow or would have allowed the Senate passed bill?
I'm inclined to vote to open up as much of the government that we can. So if it was a 3/4 opening, I would have voted yes. There is a risk, though, that you never get, Border Patrol or ICE funded, and that is a bad thing to happen. And we just had an older Air Force veteran murdered yesterday by an undocumented immigrant here. So we got to have ICE, we got to have Border Patrol. And I think to the Leader Jeffries' comments, I think the right way to handle this is to find some of the compromises that they want, not all of them, like body cameras, like wearing their IDs. There's things that I think that we could agree on where we could fully fund ICE and Border Patrol too. But to answer your question, I would be inclined to vote for the bill that opens up the most government that we can. So if it's the bill that the Speaker's doing, I'm going to vote yes because it's a 60-day or a temporary full funding of all of DHS. If it was a more limited bill like the Senate, I would have voted yes as well, because I really can't stand seeing TSA, FEMA, all these other people not getting paid. But we got to have ICE, we got to have Border Patrol. And I wish the Democrats would take some assurance that the secretary's been fired and the person who ran the operations in Minneapolis is also being removed, that we have new leadership there, the tactics and the strategy has changed. And so there's already been changes made, and I think that should be acknowledged.
And I'm sure you have heard them also arguing that even if CPB and ICE are not funded now, they're already flush with money because of the big, beautiful bill that you all passed last year.
It's a little murky to me what the impacts will be without having these portions of the Homeland Security Appropriations Bill funded. But I think I heard Mr. Jeffries pretty clear. He is very hostile to ICE, very hostile to Border Patrol. In the end, I think we got to get to a higher level here and figure out what compromises can we make so that we can move forward on both of these areas, because we've got to have ICE, you got to have Border Patrol, and there's things I think common sense Americans are willing to do to meet in the middle and get past this. But Dana, I got to tell you, my heart tugs voting. I feel like we're at a continued impasse and gridlock, and the thought of not paying TSA for another day or even another week is a terrible answer. And ultimately, it's not the right answer, and it's a sign of a dysfunctional government.
Yeah, I think this is just the latest sign of a dysfunctional government. I'm sure you would agree. I want to play a little bit of what your leader, the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, said this afternoon as he announced he was going to reject what the Senate passed.
We have terrorists in our country. We have obviously murderers. They're putting it on display. And then these big blue cities that have sanctuary city policies, they're releasing these people onto the streets. They released them over the border when they came over under the Biden years. And that is the turmoil that we're facing right now, the very serious threats to the homeland and everybody.
So that argument, that messaging, it came after he had a conversation with the president and made a decision that they were going to stand firm. That's the kind of messaging that the president has done very well on politically for years, but not so much since the horrible events of Minneapolis, which is why the Democrats, as you know, politically feel that they can keep pushing. What do you think about the idea of Republicans kind of digging in on immigration politics once again?
I think two things can be true. I think what the Speaker said, there's a lot of truth to it. For example, as you know, I've already mentioned it, a retired Air Force veteran was murdered yesterday in a train station by an illegal immigrant that had previously been, caught and then released. That is wrong. Also, I would say that there was overreach done by Border Patrol and ICE. I have a couple incidences in Omaha where people were in Omaha legally with legal work permits and were detained and were in the process of being deported until we intervened. And so we do need to rein in ICE and Border Patrol. I think we have new leadership. I got to keep stressing this. The secretary's been fired. The main proponents of the overreach have been removed. I think Director Holman, for example, is doing a much more sound, balanced policy. So I think this is doable for the greatest country in the world to realize, yes, there's been overreach, but we got to know that there's bad people here too that we got to take care of. And I just think there's some common sense middle ground with our Democrat colleagues that should be able to open this up and get past this. Body cameras, wearing your IDs, not wearing masks, things like this, they make sense.
I think the words common sense that you used more than once are probably why you're leaving Congress, because you can't find it in those hallways where you are, which is really too bad. Congressman, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.